I don't know what they consider this with techno and what Pogo thinks. We should get him on the show to talk about it.
We should.
I am very excited to have our next guest on.
Yes.
I'm supposed to
Huge
say,
fan.
and I'm also supposed to pronounce it supposed, but I always get it wrong. Also, solace, I usually get wrong as a Canadian. But I've been a fan of his for a long time. You've heard me say, as far as just stand-up, two of the funniest stand-ups I think ever on earth are Nick DiPaolo, Norm Macdonald. As far as overall being one of the funniest people alive, not just stand-up, but also sketches, storytelling, podcasting. His show, podcast is available everywhere. Fighter and the Kid. You've seen him on Schooled, which is a spinoff of The Goldbergs, as Coach Meller. You've seen him in The Hangover, and his newest special, Complicated Apes, is available on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play. Mr. Bryan Callen, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me, my friend. It's good to be here. I love. I've been a fan, so it's good to be here.
Don't say it.
And I like the way you were dancing with just your shoulder. You were just moving your shoulder up and down.
It was doing a little bit of a Floyd Mayweather shoulder roll. Like, what's up? What's up, bitch? And then come with the uppercut.
I move from the hips, but whatever.
Right. Well, I know you have powerful hips. Little known fact. I don't know if I know that you've done wrestling in your lifetime. The Floyd Mayweather style of fighting with the shoulder roll, it only works if you're 5'2". Because when I tried it, the glove here did not cover my entire dome. I found out it's not the same thing.
I do a little boxing. I try to do it every week, and I was trying to, quote unquote, perfect the Philly shell, and I got punched in the face enough times where I became dizzy, where I was getting foggy brain. I even said to Brendan Schaub, I said, hey, I'm forgetting things. And Brendan said, well, stop sparring because you're an actor, you're 52, and you should be sparring because that's ridiculous.
And then so, Joe gave you some DMT, and all is well with the world, I assume.
That did take away my fear of death. So now I still use it.
Then you saw the clockwork elves. By the way, I'm not entirely sure that what we just described is hard data, more anecdotal. So the shoulder roll may work for you. Callen, you're just right now. You're everywhere. You have your podcast, Schooled. I've been a huge fan of the Goldbergs for a long time. I haven't watched as much of Schooled because I've been very busy lately. And your latest stand-up special. I don't want to get you in trouble because we have a lot of people on the show who are obviously more centrist, more moderate, and people assume that they're a right-wing neo-Nazi just for appearing on here. But I know in your special, you've talked about how kind of radicalized people have become in many ways, particularly the far left in relation to comedy and free speech. Are you worried about being drummed out of the core for even talking about that?
No, I don't worry about that. I just worry about telling the truth as I see it. And I think I'm worried that it's very easy. It's very easy to fall into this binary trap that most of us fall into as human beings. We are, I think, probably programmed to break into us versus them, we versus they. You know, those guys over there are wrong and we're right. There's a binary. Look at how we break these things into teams. You guys are gun nuts. Well, you're pussies. You know, you believe in universal health care, you must be a socialist. You know, we brand these, and I think Americans have a very tough time being both things. I think it's possible, this is going to sound radical, I think it's possible to be pro-law and order, pro-cop, and also not want innocent black people to be shot. I think it's possible to kind of be on both of those spectrums. And I also think that it's a good thing sometimes to use words like, I don't know, maybe, it depends. Mm-hmm. These are complicated issues. And the more I read about them, I do think it's important to have a philosophical bedrock you can moor into when the wind starts blowing.
Yes.
Which is why I believe in the Constitution and why I believe in individual liberty and why I believe in all these principles that, in my opinion, not only founded this country and solved the political problem. I mean, the founding fathers solved, in many ways, the political problem. Aristotle couldn't do it. Socrates couldn't do it. No one else could do it.
Not that smug Plato. He said Socrates didn't take notes. I'm gonna be taking minutes. And Socrates like, would you shut the hell up, Plato?
Well, Plato's Republic is basically it's if you look at it, it's a caste system, and it's a lot. I mean, Hitler wanted to essentially. He wanted to, the architecture of the Third Reich was based on Plato's Republic, I'm pretty sure. So the founding fathers came along and had enormous respect for the individual. Mm-hmm. Now, I know they owned a lot of human beings and slavery was well and good, but
quite a few of them.
There was
although it wasn't well and good with a lot of them. I mean, you look at, I can't remember if it was George Washington or Jefferson who made it so that he couldn't free his slaves while he was alive, but made it so that when he died, they would be freed. Yeah. But I do think
they wrote extensively on that, and they were very aware of the contradiction in talking about all men are created equal. And I think that's the most radical line of political philosophy, and I think we have to remember it. When Thomas Jefferson said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal, that is a contract we have all entered into, because what we're actually saying, it's a religious idea, which is we are all of the same moral worth. Mm-hmm. You can't prove biologically or mathematically that we're all equal. No. I mean,
just look at Floyd Mayweather.
Yes, or I talk about how LeBron James is my chocolate avatar. There's nothing equal about us, but we all believe that at the end of the day, you don't know where I'm smart, where I'm strong, where I'm courageous. So best to treat me like an individual and treat me like I'm worth a lot. That's why our justice system is predicated on the idea that if I kill a wretch on the street or I kill Bill Gates, technically I'm supposed to do the same amount of time because it's a human life. Right. And it's not up for us to judge what that life is worth.
I got to say, you talk about both sides and how people can be both. Everything I'm hearing here would get you drummed out of the core from the left, saying the founding fathers figured out a problem. And I know about slavery, but they would go, well, racism. The founding fathers were racist white males. Bryan, not doing yourself favors if they're watching.
So what they do, so what you do when you do that, when you say, when you stop me and you say you racist white males, is now you have turned those people into nouns. You have given them, you've labeled them, and you fixed them in a category, in a very strong category, meaning that now, I guess, since they're straight white males and they're racist, that they are disqualified and that they have zero contribution to anything else. So I suppose then we could go into the fact that Mohandas K. Gandhi took baths with young women, and that erases his entire legacy. Martin Luther King apparently cheated and beat his wife. That erases his entire legacy. Well, no, that was an aspect of the man. Right. And I think, again, we have to, human beings are verbs. That's why I talked about my special being complicated apes. We are complicated apes, sinners, saints, everything in between, multi-layered, multidimensional, and full of potential. Human beings are, I mean, look, you are what you are now, and you are also what you could be. And we forget that. And we have to treat each other that way.
You're getting very much back into the realm of Socrates. And we've talked about this when we do the Change My Mind and talk about abortion. This is a question that I get to. I go, hold on a second, what is a human life? You're getting into this idea of the essence of humanhood, the essence of a human being. This is some pretty deep stuff. And can I say something? I don't want this to be a sore spot, but I remember one time when you were on Joe's show, good friend Joe Rogan, love Joe Rogan. This is not, but I remember at one point someone said, like, Bryan, you could just reach deeper with your stand-up, because some people see your stand-up as silly. I don't see it that way. What I'm hearing right now is the processing of unbelievably deep, nuanced philosophical issues, and then I see it performed in stand-up in a way that allows other people who maybe aren't as intelligent as yourself, to process it. And I've always said, no, I remember watching it go, no, don't change yourself, Bryan. We love you. We love you.
We love you.
Well, I appreciate that, because certainly in this last special, that's what I tried to do. There are bad ideas out there. And one of those bad ideas is socialism. And what I mean by that is, and by the way, it doesn't mean I'm against all government interference, but I worry that when...
Do you use roads, Bryan? Do you use roads? Do you have running water? Well, then you're a socialist.
Exactly.
End debate.
Exactly. So I'm not saying we don't need a taxation system. I'm not saying you don't need a federal government. My God, you do. The question is, to what degree? And rather than have these conversations of whether or not I'm a Republican or a Democrat or I'm a socialist or a free market capitalist, I'd rather say, to what degree do you think a large central authority should have control over your life? I mean, how much of your money? I already pay 51%. 51% of my money goes to a state and federal government.
That's because you live in a state that Donald Trump would refer to as a shithole.
well, and if that's the case, if I have to give, so 51% of my day is spent working for someone else. I have accepted that. I get it. Maybe that makes sense. I don't know what the percentage should be. But I'd rather talk in those terms. But I don't know why the far left is so, they're not creative thinkers. I don't think someone like AOC or Bernie Sanders, never had a real job, by the way. I don't think this is a creative, thoughtful guy. I don't. Nobody talks about this. His one answer is tax the rich.
Right.
Oh, really? So punish people that produce, punish people that are productive. And by the way, I guess Bernie Sanders and his philosopher kings like Ocasio-Cortez, I guess they seem to know more about what to do with that money than Apple does. Apple spends $10 billion a year on research and development. I think they have a better understanding of what to do with their money to create a better product for all of us. And by the way, they might be very wealthy because they produced a product that we all use and buy. Jeff Bezos.
By the way, also, they're much more charitable, 2.6% to charity, Bernie. I mean, it really is ironic. The evil corporation, the evil pharmaceutical companies give away more, and they want to argue it's for a tax write-off. Fine, but Bernie, you buy a matcha latte at Starbucks and make sure that you have an app that rounds down the tip to 18.
Look, and by the way, SmithKline and whatever those
GlaxoSmithKline.
Look, there are issues with big pharma, but let's please not forget that Hep C is now a curable disease. We just used CRISPR-Cas9. When I say we, me and my medical team here, but CRISPR-Cas9, I believe, to cure 8 boys who had that disease, that boy in the bubble disease, where they couldn't, they didn't have immune systems. And I think they took an HIV virus, stripped it of its pathogens, and re-injected it with a certain gene that gave these kids immune systems. What? And they're doing it with leukemia. So,
Could you imagine how pissed you'd be if you went in for plasma replacement therapy and they accidentally gave you that virus? You're like, I thought it was my own platelets. No, it's AIDS.
No, but at least some boys have immune systems. If I got to get AIDS for that, that's fine. Yeah, but we're doing amazing things with the pharmaceutical companies. May have their liabilities and may be evil in one way or another. They're saving a lot of lives. But from what I have read from a very liberal slanted media, I mean, again, this is where we kind of lose sight of how important research and development is and how important the free market can be. With checks and balances, but how important they can be in moving things forward, because there is a profit motive, and a profit motive is not necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of the way human beings behave. Right. And so I worry very much that there is a lack of creativity and creative thinking on the left. It seems to me.
Can I?
I'm trying to be fair. Because I do think they have some good ideas.
Can I ask you a question? Because this is a criticism we hear lobbed at the right very often, right? And I've heard it myself. And recently, I think it was Slater Salon did a hit piece on Joe Rogan. They've done it on Nick DiPaolo now, and of course Dennis Miller, where they say, well, conservatives can't be funny. There are no funny. All comedians are liberals. And of course, the industry does lean left. So it's interesting to me that you say you don't think there's a lot of creative thinking on the left. Why do you think the industry, and particularly the most visible comedians, are they're not kind of left. They are dyed-in-the-wool leftists. Do you think that's a byproduct of the industry and the gatekeepers?
I think a lot of times you're talking about compassionate people who are emotional. And I think that the narrative it all really depends on who controls the narrative and who's able to paint the best picture. And I think that the scientific community, I think a lot of conservatives are pretty stodgy and not very personable, maybe. And a lot of your artists have probably, I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I would imagine artists probably tend to be able to empathize and probably put themselves in the place of someone who is different than theirs. I mean, that's what great novelists are able to do. Right. And it probably is, and you need these people, and you need the left. I don't buy into the fact that, you don't need opposing forces. Sure. I worry when they're not listening to each other. I worry when we're not having idea sex. I don't think that Ocasio-Cortez is a bad person. I really don't. I don't think that Bernie Sanders is a bad person. I happen to fundamentally disagree with them on a philosophical basis. It doesn't mean I want them put in jail and destroyed. I just don't agree with them, and I'd love to have a conversation to find a way to be creative with our thinking to solve problems that actually matter. Problems like, I don't want spree shooters out there, okay? Right. I don't want, I want more research and development. I want maybe a sensible tax law, blah, blah, blah. I want a clean environment. Is there a way we can put our heads together the way Google or Pixar does, and solve these problems with, let's just have an idea orgy. And that's what the Founding Fathers did. They sat around on a very hot July and just dueled it out with their brains, and they didn't agree with each other, but they had spirited debate and civility. And that's what
sometimes it got pretty angry, but that's because they had just switched from tea to coffee. They weren't exactly used to it at that point.
They threw the tea away.
Yes, and some things worth fighting for. Some things are worth fighting for. You define yourself along the lines of which you're willing to fight for.
Right. Well,
That's all.
I want to keep this going because for people surprised out there, this is a pre-tape because he's in Los Angeles and has other shows to do. We're going to keep you around for a web extended version for those who are exclusive Mug Club members. Of course, it is Bryan Callen on Twitter. The special is Complicated Apes. Stay tuned. We'll wrap this up. Everyone else, go to Mug Club.